Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Football Advice Show presented by Max. My name is Adam Levitan. And yes, the vampired one, the pale one, Michael Leone, is not with us here today. It is indeed Mark Denkenbring of EstablishTheRun.com. Mark, how's it going today?
It's good. Yeah, officially spooky season here in October. We got the pumpkins and bats here separating us, Adam, on the screen. So happy to be healthy and here talking fantasy football with you today.
Beautiful. On today's show, we're going to discuss some players to trade for ahead of the NFL trade deadline. NFL trade deadline will be the Tuesday after week 9. We've already seen a bunch of big trades go down. We'll try to look ahead to maybe some more trades that we could also have. Also, on today's show, we will have, of course, your no sleep week 8 sleepers of the week. Be sure you stay tuned for that, and we'll get to as many of your questions from chat as we can, especially to the people who are extremely respectful and kind to us. Those are the people we really love to answer the questions for. All right, let's get into it here, Mark, with players to trade for right now ahead of week 8. We'll start with Devonta Smith. I mean, stone cold airball, 0 points, 0 catches in week 7 for Devonta Smith. This was a game where Jalen Hurts only threw it 14 times, though, as the Eagles rolled 28-3 over the Giants. But I'm sure there's a lot of panic out there right now on Devonta Smith. Mark, what do you think about him rest of season?
Certainly a good buy low candidate, in my opinion, and optimistic looking at the Eagles' schedule moving forward. Arguably the most fantasy friendly schedule moving forward here. They play the Bengals this upcoming week, the Jaguars, who have been a sieve all season, the Cowboys, whose defense has really struggled, Commanders, Rams, Ravens, Panthers. I mean, it's just, an absolute runway here for this Eagles offense to continue to churn. Obviously, they leaned on Saquon Barkley last week against his former team in the Giants. As you mentioned, Jalen Hurts only got off 14 pass attempts, and Dallas Goedert's still sidelined here with a hamstring injury. So even if A.J. Brown is getting his usual 9-10 targets per game, there's still going to be plenty to left over for Devonta Smith coming up. So I think after that poor performance last week, this is a great time to buy. The Eagles are past their bye as well, and just an amazing schedule upcoming. So love Devonta Smith as a buy low.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Best schedule you could possibly have for Eagles offense the rest of the way. Next up is Bengals, Jaguars, Cowboys, Commanders, Rams, Ravens, Panthers. It's absolutely insane. All right. Second one is one ahead of the trade deadline. Now, this is going to be a risky one here because we don't know exactly what's going to happen at quarterback. We don't know if he's going to get moved. However, Diontae Johnson remains a very good NFL wide receiver. I actually thought that there was a pretty good chance he would get traded to the Chiefs, and that's why I was trying to scoop up Diontae Johnson. Now that this DeAndre Hopkins trade has gone down, does not look like the Chiefs will be going after Diontae Johnson, but there's certainly some other teams out there that could be interested in Diontae Johnson. I guess the problem, Mark, is that if he stays here in Carolina, it's a bit rough, although when he was healthy and Dalton was healthy, it was actually pretty good. So what do you think about Diontae Johnson rest of season?
There are definitely some moving parts here. Andy Dalton sprained his thumb in a car accident earlier this week. So the Panthers are going back to Bryce Young, which doesn't, input a lot of optimism into their offensive outlook moving forward. But we've seen Diontae Johnson just be the focal point in the passing game here. And there is still a chance that, maybe the team like the Bucks, who just lost Chris Godwin for the season and Mike Evans for an extended period of time, maybe they're a team that will go after someone like Diontae Johnson. If the Rams trade Cooper Kupp, there's still some moves to be made out there, I think. So, it's a decent buy low again after just a really poor performance last week. It's always in general a decent idea to buy players when they're coming off a down week. So while it might not be the cleanest setup for Diontae in Carolina, at least we know they have a horrible defense and will need to throw the ball a lot to potentially keep up in games as well. So I think you get a good floor play here with Diontae rest of the season. And then if he does get traded, that ceiling's going to improve as well. So I think it's a decent time to buy Diontae as well.
Yeah, I mean, we had some huge projections on Diontae when he was healthy and Dalton was healthy. So, there's definitely, even if he does end up staying in Carolina, I think there's still some room here to find some value. Third one, players to trade for. Xavier Worthy. Now, you might even, I don't even think you have to trade for Xavier Worthy at this point, actually. I've seen people dropping Xavier Worthy. And I actually don't blame them for it. He has not done a ton. However, underlying stats on Worthy have been pretty good. Almost a 30% target share. In other words, almost 30% of Patrick Mahomes' targets last week went to Xavier Worthy at this exact moment in time where Worthy has not done a lot lately, but underlying usage is good and everybody's excited about DeAndre Hopkins. I think this is the time to pick up Xavier Worthy or like offer nothing to try to get him off someone else's team. I'm not confident Xavier Worthy is going to be a good NFL wide receiver as a rookie, but I don't think he should be on waivers either. So yeah, Mark, what's your feeling on Worthy now that we know DeAndre Hopkins is a Chief?
I think it's fine to buy low here too, just because I think people are, with DeAndre Hopkins coming into town saying, "Oh, Xavier Worthy's going to get phased out of this offense," and I'm not sure that's exactly true. They definitely want to continue to use his speed in the running game. We've seen him get carries in over half the games this season for the Chiefs, and then if last week he hits that deep ball that Patrick Mahomes overthrew him on, then this is, I think, a different story, and people are viewing Xavier Worthy differently here. So the Chiefs are still going to take shots to him. I think we can guarantee 4, 5, 6 targets a week. He might not get up to that 8 or 10 range that he saw 8 targets last week. That might not happen again with DeAndre Hopkins in town, but certainly when we still want to invest in the Chiefs offense, even though it's been a bit of a down start for them this season.
All right, let's get to some chats. We love the chat. Tommy Larson says, should I give away Devonta Smith to get DeAndre Hopkins? So already covering 2 topics that we've already covered here today. I prefer Devonta Smith here. DeAndre Hopkins is 32 years old. I think asking him to do what Rashee Rice was doing is just not going to go that well. Like, that's not his game. Rashee Rice's game was catch the ball in front of a linebacker, run away from him, and get 20 yards. DeAndre Hopkins is not doing that. It's more contested catch stuff. So I don't think you're going to get like the same type of, even like a shell of the production. So I think it's Devonta Smith based on schedule, based on talent. But I understand the hype around DeAndre Hopkins. Any thoughts on this one, Mark? Devonta or Hopkins?
I also lean Devonta here, just with the schedule upcoming. And yeah, DeAndre Hopkins at this point in his career is not a big yards after the catch guy. So even if he is using that Rashee Rice role, if he catches 5, 6 balls a game, like I don't think he's going to be doing that all that much with them. So it kind of comes down to touchdowns in that Chiefs offense, and if those are going to DeAndre Hopkins or not. In general, I'd still prefer to have Devonta Smith.
6K Ethan says, should I trade Brian Thomas for Devon Achane? Man, love both these guys. Tua Tagovailoa is expected back here this week. I mean, I love Brian Thomas. Devon Achane, if he can regain some of that efficiency from last year, and then you also get more offensive efficiency with Tua being in there, Achane could break fantasy again. I love Brian Thomas. I think the ceiling on Achane's way higher. So I'll say Achane. Mark, any thoughts here on this one, BTJ or Achane?
Yeah, I tend to agree that I'd rather have Achane straight up in this conversation. Certainly, the wide receiver position has been decimated in fantasy so far this year, so it's hard to trade away a good one like Brian Thomas. But yeah, we've just seen absolutely nuclear ceilings from Devon Achane when Tua Tagovailoa is healthy, and I think now is a decent time to buy Achane just before the public and all of us see it again, with Tua. People are still concerned about his health, rightfully so. It is a big risk reward kind of scenario because one more concussion for Tua and he likely is out for the season. So it's a big risk reward take, but we're trying to win our fantasy football leagues, not come in second or third or fourth. So I like taking the swing here on Achane.
All right. BJ Howler says he's got a tough one. Should I play Puka Nacua tonight? So this is a really weird situation, right? Puka Nacua was not expected to play in this game based on most reports. I don't even think he's practiced much at all. I think McVay even said he hasn't practiced fully in, God, who knows how long. So they're just going to throw him out there tonight. The whole thing strikes me as weird and rushed. However, historically, the Rams are cautious. I mean, they don't put guys out there if they're not 100%. So I honestly have no idea what's going to happen with Puka tonight. I actually have him on one of my teams also here. And I was going to start Tyler Lockett over him, especially with DK Metcalf looking shaky. I also have Xavier Worthy. I was thinking about starting Xavier Worthy over Puka also, but I'm still thinking about this. Mark, what do you think about playing Puka here tonight?
It's really hard because you mentioned the Rams have historically been pretty conservative with injuries. We saw them hold out Cooper Kupp this past week, and now he's going to play tonight. But also coming into the season, Puka was dealing with the same PCL injury. They threw him out there, and he got hurt, in the first quarter of that game. So my trust levels have kind of dwindled a little bit on the Rams this season. I also have him and comparing him to Xavier Worthy, Cedric Tillman, who I just picked up this week, as well as Trey Tucker. And just on paper, it's really hard to go with those guys over someone like Puka Nacua. So at this point, I'm leaning sitting him. But maybe we get some better information before the game. Regardless, if he does play, it's likely that he's used in the red zone in more important situations. So I think it comes down to who else is on your roster. Like in your case, Adam, I would play Tyler Lockett with DK Metcalf expected out.
Yeah.
But certainly there's going to be some tough decisions out there with Puka, and even tougher too, since it's Thursday Night Football. Like we don't really know how the Sunday games are going to shake out. But there also are no bye weeks this week. So probably a lot of decent options as well for people out there. But it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah. I mean, it depends, BJ. It depends, obviously, who you have on your team, right? And like we have Puka in right now and projected / ranked as if he's going to be very limited in this game. We could be wrong, but that's our guess as of now. So if you want to see how we have him stacked up to some other guys, you can head to Establish the Run. Carson Mason 6 says Tyrone Tracy Jr. or Zach Moss this week. I was actually stunned by how much Tyrone Tracy Jr. played in that game ahead of Devin Singletary. Now, talked to Ron on a little bit, covers the Giants for ESPN. He thought it was at least partially due to the fact that Devin Singletary still wasn't 100% off of his groin injury, and Singletary should play more going forward. But at this point, it's hard to be that confident in that. Meanwhile, Zach Moss continues to lose playing time to Chase Brown. Mark, what do you think about this one? Tyrone Tracy or Zach Moss?
It's tough here because I think you're playing for a similar thing, which is for either player to catch a few passes, because that's mostly where they're going to be used in their offense. Chase Brown, despite being the more explosive back compared to Zach Moss, he's getting a lot more of the base down work, whereas Zach Moss, they trust more in the passing game. And then Tyrone Tracy, former receiver in college, the Giants seem to like him a lot in the passing game as well. So this one's close for me. I think I'd lean into Tyrone Tracy just because there's some untapped upside there. If the split is the same this week as it was last week with Singletary, and he gets 70 to 80% of the snaps, that's an amazing outcome. And I don't think that's possible this week for Zach Moss. So I think I'd lean Tracy and hope that he retains the bell cow split there over Singletary.
Yeah, agreed. Not Durant says, I guess that's a reference to Kevin Durant's burner, maybe. Not Durant says Tony Pollard or Jalen Waddle. So big news for Waddle people. Tua is back this week. Obviously, Jalen Waddle, I understand people are like, oh, he's the second wide receiver. You can't play Jalen Waddle. I mean, Jalen Waddle's been a very, very good NFL player and fantasy producer for a while now. My lean here is Waddle with Tua back, but I could also make a case for Pollard. Also, I'm not sure, do we have Tyjae Spears status yet, Mark? I'm not sure on that one. But yeah, what do you think about this one, Pollard or Waddle?
There was some optimism that Spears is going to return to practice in a limited fashion today or tomorrow and might be able to give it a go this weekend. So certainly if he's back, I would definitely lean Waddle. I still think I lean Waddle in general here just because the Dolphins get the Cardinals at home. Again, I think Tua will be pretty much full go here this weekend coming back from the concussion. So I lean Waddle here. If Tyjae Spears is out, Pollard could get 15 to 20 touches again, but it's a really tough matchup on the road in Detroit. The Titans are now without DeAndre Hopkins. Calvin Ridley has not practiced this week, so this offense could just get absolutely nothing going. So I think I'd lean into the upside of Waddle here.
Yeah, agreed. Jay the Jedi says, is Jordan Addison worth a start tonight? So it's been underwhelming for Jordan Addison. He's had a bunch of issues, multiple ankle sprains, had the off-field thing, speeding or whatever again. But looks healthy to me. Had a big catch last week, and this is a pretty good matchup for him here, I think, against the Rams. So I like Jordan Addison here this week. Mark, any thoughts on Addison's spot tonight?
Yeah, I think it's a good time to play Addison again. We got the news that TJ Hawkinson will not be playing tonight, but Jordan Addison has been more of a deep threat this year as he has an 18-yard average depth of target this season, one of the highest in the NFL. So he is more of a boom bust nature type of player. But, the Rams now getting Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back, they should be able to score and put points up on this Vikings defense. So I would lean playing Addison tonight. I think a big game could be in store.
Definitely. All right. Now it is time for the moment you've all been waiting for. It is time for the Don't Sleep Fantasy Sleepers of the Week, presented by Max. Stream the No Sleep October collection on Max for movies that haunt you all month long. I don't like watching scary movies before bed. However, I'm not actually a real man, so you don't have to listen to me. Okay. No Sleep Sleepers of the Week. We have 4 of them here for you today. The first one, Javonte Williams. So up and down season for Javonte. Everybody on earth, everybody on earth runs all over the Panthers. It really does whatever they want to the Panthers. This team is on pace to give up just an outrageous amount of touchdowns, like threatening some of those really bad Lions defenses from the 2000s or so. I think this is probably the best spot that Javonte Williams will have all season. Mark, thoughts on Javonte here against the Panthers?
Broncos are a 10-point home favorite here against the Panthers. Again, Bryce Young is going to be starting again, and kind of a surprise start too, with Dalton getting hurt earlier in this week. So I think it's going to be a great game to target the Broncos. They have one of the highest team totals on the week, over 25 points, which is just wild considering how the Broncos offense has performed this year. So yeah, I love Javonte Williams this week. Hopefully, he got in the box twice last weekend. Hopefully he can get in there at least one more time for all the fantasy players out there. I know I'll be starting him in all my leagues.
All right. The second no sleep sleeper of the week is Marcus Mariota. Now, obviously, we have to watch this one closely. Jaden Williams could practice tomorrow. If you need to stream a quarterback, I think it would be Marcus Mariota would be my favorite, assuming Jaden Daniels is out here home against the Bears. They had a bunch of running plays for Marcus Mariota after he came in for Jaden Daniels last week. If Jaden Daniels ends up playing in this game, you could also stream Bo Nix, another Bronco here against the Panthers. But yeah, let's assume for now that Jaden Daniels is out here. Mark, what do you think about Marcus Mariota against the Bears?
I think it's solid because obviously we think Jaden Daniels is the better quarterback at this point in time, but Marcus Mariota, at least stylistically, mirrors Daniels a bit, and we saw that last week. They still ran a lot of the RPO stuff that they run with Daniels. Marcus Mariota had 6 designed carries. That helps a lot in the fantasy department, just knowing that we're probably going to get a couple points out of him on the ground. We've also seen Jaden Daniels keep the ball on RPOs a lot around the goal line. If Marcus Mariota does that again this week and scores a rushing touchdown, that just gives you the floor that you want at the quarterback position. So somewhat of a tough spot against the Bears, but this Commanders offense has been awesome all year. I don't expect that to really change with all their other weapons healthy outside of Daniels.
All right. Let's go to the number 3 sleeper of the week. It is Tyler Lockett. I already mentioned I have him on one team, and I'm most certainly starting him here against the Bills team that I think has a pretty good defense. However, has been really struggling with injuries here this season on defensive side of the ball. You also get DK Metcalf with a knee injury. I would consider him questionable at best right now, is DK Metcalf. And so as much as I like Jackson Smith and Jigba, like the guy going down the field, which is where DK Metcalf was going for a lot of his targets, is going to be Tyler Lockett, not JSN. So I hate to say it, man, because I'm team young over team old, but I actually think I might prefer Lockett over JSN here. I like them both, but I might prefer Lockett over JSN here. Mark, what do you think about Seattle stuff with DK Metcalf looking shaky?
Yeah, even if you do prefer Lockett over JSN, in my opinion, you start both this week without DK Metcalf there. That's 8 to 10 targets that are going to be pulled out of the offense and given elsewhere. And I think Lockett and JSN are the 2 main guys that they're going to go to here. And Tyler Lockett was on the injury report last week. He ended up playing, but not on the injury report this week, which is nice, for these aging veteran players. We want to see them healthy and out there playing to their full ability. So I think Lockett, in a spot start this week is solid.
Yeah, Tyler Lockett is also a real estate agent in his spare time. I read an article about this offseason. What a dude, man. It seems awesome. Anyways, last no sleep sleeper of the week, Cade Otton. So you saw what happened last week when Mike Evans went out. You started to see a bunch of targets to Cade Otton. Now, not only will Mike Evans be out of this game against the Falcons, but also Chris Godwin is going to be out. You're ripping out this entire offense. And so when quarterbacks lose like cluster injuries, who do they trust? He trusts Cade Otton, man. Cade Otton's out there for every snap of every game the last 2 years, runs every single route. Targets have been tough to come by for Cade Otton because A, he's not that good, and B, Evans and Godwin were there. But now he's competing against total dust balls off the street like Sterling Shepard, Trey Palmer, etc. for targets. Now you start thinking about, man, we could have a really solid target projection here on Cade Otton. So yeah, Mark, how do you think Tampa handles it here without their 2 stars?
But yeah, Naughton's even gotten 37 targets over his last 5 games. A lot of those have come in garbage time, including, I think, like 5 or 6 of the targets he got this past week. But still, you mentioned it, just the depletion of the wide receiver core here for Tampa Bay. And this is a rematch of, that Thursday night football game we saw in, I believe, week 3 or 4, where the Falcons won 36-30 in overtime. Both offenses went off here. I think it kind of sets up similarly this week. And obviously losing Mike Evans and Chris Godwin is tough for the Bucs offense, but you mentioned it. Cade Otton's going to be out there every play. Atlanta is a pretty good matchup, funneling targets to the tight end. So anytime you can pencil in 6-7 targets for your tight end in fantasy, that's strong, and I'm willing to play into it.
All right, that was the Don't Sleep Fantasy Sleepers of the Week, presented by Max. Stream the No Sleep October collection on Max for movies that haunt you all month long. All right, let's get back to some chats here from the people. Dreaded365 is in a super flex league. He says he needs to pick 2 out of Russ Wilson, Tua Tagovailoa, and Matthew Stafford here in this game tonight. So yeah, it looked really good for Russ Wilson, obviously in a very difficult matchup last week against the Jets. Tua is making his debut here, or his return here. And then you get Matthew Stafford against a very good Brian Flores defense, even though they got shredded a bit by the Lions last week. We have to eliminate one here. Mark, who would you sit out of these 3?
Well, I'll say I think Tua is the lock of this group. They get the Cardinals at home, so I love that matchup. Russ Wilson gets the Giants, and then obviously Matt Stafford gets the Vikings tonight. So I think with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back, I would lean into Matt Stafford here. I'm not sure that the Giants are going to be able to compete and score points on this tough Steelers defense, and we know that Arthur Smith and that offense loves to lean into the running game. So I think I'd lean into Stafford and Tua here, just given they're both back and have full weapons at their disposal.
Man, it's crazy, man. We have in projection, we have them for almost the exact same 15.4 for Russ, 15.3 for Stafford. Just stone cold pick 'em there. Yeah, I like with those guys back targeting Stafford. Agree with Mark. Mike DQ says, what type of wide receiver should I be targeting if I'm dealing James Cook? So a lot of people out there need wide receivers right now. Like Mark said, they've been absolutely decimated by injury. Giving up James Cook, I think, is an interesting idea to try to get a wide receiver. I mean, God, Mark, could we get somebody really good? Like, I'm sure we could probably get Devonta Smith. That's for sure. Maybe we could get somebody really good, though, like Tyreek or something crazy. Probably not. What do you think about targets for James Cook?
Devonta Smith, I think, is a good one. Maybe test the waters on someone like T. Higgins as well. The Bengals have a pretty favorable schedule upcoming. And I still think people, underestimate T. Higgins since Jamar Chase is seen as the alpha there, but just the targets are both being funneled directly to those two. Maybe someone like Brian Thomas, who we mentioned as well, could be there, probably on the lower end of the targets I would go after. But yeah, I think T. Higgins or Devonta Smith are great potential options there.
All right, let's go to I Don't Understand You says, should I keep Nick Chubb or use him as trade bait? So Nick Chubb comes back last week, gets 11 carries, uncharacteristically very inefficient. Only 22 yards on those 11 carries, did score a touchdown here. You also removed Deshaun Watson from the equation, which I think is a good thing. I think the offensive philosophy of the Browns should change or might, not just should change, will change. In other words, they came into this year trying to go spread, try to go real pass heavy. Now Chubb is healthy. Watson's out. They want to get a look at DTR. I feel like it should be and will be more run-based now. So which brings me to the question, I guess, Mark, is how much work can Nick Chubb actually handle? And by the way, Jerome Ford did not play in that game last week. He's going to be back relatively soon as well. So this is a complicated one, Mark. What do you think about Nick Chubb rest of season?
I'm pretty torn on it as well. You mentioned he handled 11 carries, and those pretty much all came in the first half. In the second half, he really didn't play much at all. Also got 3 targets, which was solid. We typically don't see Chubb used all that much in the passing game. There's just a lot of uncertainty around this Browns team. Their offense, they turned over play calling duties to Ken Dorsey, the former offensive coordinator of the Bills, who we know loves to throw the ball around. So I'm worried that they're going to continue to stick with the pass heavy game plan. I would lean trying to sell high on Chubb, just because I don't think this Browns team is going to win many games, play from ahead much at all this season. So, kind of coming back, scoring a touchdown in the first game is a decent time to sell high, I think, with people dreaming on him. And you mentioned that Jerome Ford was out last week. He's likely to come back in a couple weeks here too. So it's certainly tricky, but if you need wins right away as well, I would try and sell Chubb, because I don't think he's really going to be full go for another 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks here.
Yep. Drew says, would you trade George Pickens for Jordan Mason? We need to talk about the CMC situation. So CMC sounds like, in a best case scenario, he'll be back week 10. If that happens, the ideal path is, he starts in like a timeshare or whatever with Jordan Mason, and he ramps his way up to being full go for the fantasy playoffs. That would be like the absolute dream. In a worst case scenario, we find out that these injuries to his Achilles are so bad that he can't play, so like super wide range of outcomes on CMC. My lean right now is that, knowing CMC, he is going to try to come back. And he's going, even if he's at 80%, even if he's at risk of re-injury, he's going to try to come back and win a Super Bowl with this team. This is like their window right now to try to win it. So my lean here would be, I'd rather have George Pickens than Jordan Mason, because I'm more optimistic than I guess probably a lot of people are on CMC, but admittedly, I'm just guessing. Mark, what do you think about this one?
It's pretty much a short-term versus long-term discussion, I think. I mean, maybe this week, Jordan Mason against the Cowboys is probably a better play than George Pickens straight up. But when you just look at the rest of the season, especially come fantasy playoff time, when all the money is made in these leagues, I'd rather have George Pickens on my roster. So I agree with you there.
All right. Last chat here from JWhale27 says, should I start Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., or Courtland Sutton in full PPR? So Courtland Sutton I know he's playing the Panthers, but God, he could just airball at any time. Marvin Harrison Jr. has shown an ability to airball outside of one half this entire season, and Chris Olave has been hurt and won't have Derek Carr here. So yeah, we're scraping at the wide receiver position, Jay Whale. I totally get it. Mark, what do you think about this one? Olave, Marvin, or Sutton?
I hate to say it, because Chris Olave and Marvin Harrison Jr. we were drafting in the top couple of rounds, and Courtland Sutton, is more like 9th, 10th round. But I think I go with Sutton here just because he's facing the Panthers at home. I mean, this Panthers defense is like a college defense. It's just horrendous. We saw Marcus Mariota come in and shred them mid-game last week. They just given points up to everyone, and Courtland Sutton coming off a 0 target week. I think there's a little bit of a squeaky wheel narrative there, and pretty much the best matchup you can get. So I think I'd lean Sutton here, despite the perceived talent gap for the other two guys. Hopefully, kind of wait and see for them to get more involved in the offense.
Yeah, we have all three of them between 11 and 12 points in projection. All three of them right between 11 and 12. So yeah. All right. Let's get back to our list here of fantasy players to trade for right now. Our first 3 on the list were Devonta Smith, Deontay Johnson, in the hopes that he's on the move, and Xavier Worthy, who should be extremely cheap right now, despite getting 30% of the targets from Patrick Mahomes last week. Let's get to number 4 on the list here. Another one that you can probably get, similar to Xavier Worthy, off waivers at that point, and that is Jordan Whittington. Now, this stems all from the trade deadline that's coming up in the NFL. Cooper Kupp, out of all the receivers or all the players, fantasy relevant players that could be traded, I feel like Cooper Kupp is the most likely one. They're leaking stuff that makes me feel like they actually want to get rid of Cooper Kupp. And if that happens and Matthew Stafford stays and Jordan Whittington gets healthy, I know it's a big parlay here, but if we can get all 3 of those things, I do think Whittington is actually pretty valuable if he's in that full-time role. We saw him earn targets at a pretty good rate here. So long parlay here, Mark, but you can probably get Whittington off waivers in some leagues at this point. What do you think about Rams stuff? Not tonight, but going forward.
I think you can definitely get him off waivers. And if not, whoever has him in fantasy is going to be really frustrated after, it was ruled that he was going to play last week when both Puka and Cup were out, and he tossed up a goose egg. So this week he's not playing tonight on Thursday Night Football against the Vikings. So I think any fantasy manager is going to be fed up with Jordan Whittington at this point. So I do think it's a good time to just toss out a low offer and potentially get him on your roster. Because I think if Cooper Kupp is traded, that's great. Also, the Rams are 2-4 at this point. They have a tough matchup against the Vikings tonight. If they go to 2-5 and maybe trade Cooper Kupp, and we don't know Puka Nakua's health status the rest of the way. So I think it's a good time to buy the dip.
All right. Number 5 on the list is Trey McBride. It's been not great at the tight end position for a lot of guys. McBride hasn't hit like a big game yet, but I still think he's one of the top 3 tight ends to own in fantasy for the rest of the year. And if the person who owns Trey McBride right now has seen enough, or maybe they picked up someone like Tucker Kraft or something they want to just keep starting him, I'd be happy to take Trey McBride off their hands. Any other thoughts on McBride here rest of season, Mark?
You mentioned no big games, and that's just because he hasn't scored any touchdowns yet. Right now, he's second among all tight ends in targets, 4th in yards, and then 0 touchdowns. So certainly a little bit disappointing, but the opportunity is there. This Cardinals defense continues to really struggle. They're gonna give up points, and Trey McBride, with how poorly Marvin Harrison Jr. has performed, is the focal point of this offense. So I do think, at a position that we're struggling to find reliable starters week in and week out, Trey McBride is the guy I'm looking to buy low at.
All right. Last one on the list is someone who hasn't played yet this entire year. It is TJ Hawkinson. If he is on waivers, you should be adding him ASAP. If someone, is so frustrated, TJ Hawkinson's not even playing tonight, who knows when he'll be back? I think it's time. I mean, it's been time, because this team is playing very throw heavy. Sam Darnold's playing at a really high level. The tight end position is a mess, and TJ Hawkinson has shown an ability to earn 10, 12 targets in games like it's no problem, which we do not see at the tight end position very much. So yeah, I want to get TJ Hawkinson on my teams. Mark, any thoughts on him before we move to final chats here today?
Yeah, I mean, I've hit on it a few times that we're playing to win the whole fantasy championship, and TJ Hawkinson, I think, is going to be peaking towards the end of the season. The Vikings, as you mentioned, are throwing a lot. They are top 5 in the NFL in pass rate over expectation. And then when we get to the fantasy playoffs, they have matchups at Seattle and Green Bay, also against the Bears team, all 3 offenses that are going to score. And I think the Vikings are going to have to put points up in return as well. So, Hawkins, people have probably been stashing Hawkinson on their IR, so maybe they're hesitant to give him up at this point when he's on the precipice of returning. But yeah, the tight end position's been rough this year, and we know Hawkinson can be one of the best.
All right, let's recap our list here of players to consider trading for ahead of Week 8 or ahead of Week 9 trade deadline. Devonta Smith, Deontay Johnson, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, Trey McBride, and TJ Hawkinson. All right, get to a few more chats here before we get out of here today. I Do Angles says Brian Robinson Jr. or Amari Cooper. So Amari Cooper only ran 12 routes in his Bills debut. It looked to me like he didn't even know like where he was supposed to be going or what he was supposed to be doing. And he still earned, I believe it was 5 targets, scored a touchdown. So pretty exciting for Amari Cooper. I'm a Brian Robinson guy, though. I like Brian Robinson for sure playing the Bears. Tough one here, Mark. What do you think between Brian Robinson and Amari Cooper?
Both good options, I think. With Marcus Mariota under center, I would imagine the Commanders lean into the run-heavy attack against a Bears team that has been more of a run funnel since they have a strong secondary. So I think Brian Robinson here would be my lean. I do like Amari Cooper a lot, but on the road at the Seahawks is a tough environment to play in your second game. In an offense, we know how loud the Seahawks stadium is. I imagine the Bills are going to be in silent count a lot. Maybe Amari Cooper won't be on the same page as Josh Allen. But again, I think both are really strong plays here. I just lean slightly towards Brian Robinson.
Yeah, we have Brian Robinson about a point ahead in projection here. Astakem says Cade Otton or Evan Ingram. Oh, an embarrassment of riches. An embarrassment of riches at the tight end position for Astakem 1, Cade Otton or Evan Ingram. And by the way, breaking news into the show, Bucky Irving has already been ruled out for Sunday here, adding to the Bucs woes. But yeah, what do you think about this one, Mark? Cade Otton or Evan Ingram?
Again, I think they're pretty similar plays. We can expect probably 6 or 7 targets for both players. I think I lean Evan Ingram here a little bit. I just think he's a bit more of a talented player. The Jags are going to Green Bay, going to have to score some points as well. So I slightly lean Evan Ingram, but both decent plays in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Evan Ingram too. Just better player. Ron V says Brock Bowers or McBride. So I love both. I think it's hard to say I'd rather have anyone than Brock Bowers right now at the tight end position, and that goes for weekly or rest of season. Mark, what do you think about Bowers versus McBride?
Agree, it'd be Bowers for me, just easily the tight end one role right now. His first round draft capital has shown pretty quickly here in the NFL. He's just been dominant so far. So obviously love McBride, but yeah, I'd lean Bowers.
Tennis Trey 2 says, what wide receiver can I get for Chase Brown? So it's funny. Everybody's looking for wide receivers now. So Chase Brown clearly is moving ahead of Zach Moss, but it's coming off of not a great game. I'd probably wait till Chase Brown has a big game, which I think is coming, before you try to trade him. But yeah, I don't know, Mark. What kind of receivers do you can get for Chase Brown at this point? It's going to be tough to get wide receivers.
I would eye someone like Jalen Waddle potentially. He's disappointed all season. Chase Brown, people are certainly excited about. He started to take over that RB1 role in Cincinnati. So I think Jalen Waddle is a good one to buy before we see this Dolphins offense with Tua back at the helm. Maybe you could get someone like Amari Cooper. That's probably dreaming a little high in his new situation in Buffalo, but who knows? I would test the market, shoot high, because I do like Chase Brown rest of the season and wouldn't mind holding on to him as well if you don't get a great return.
G3 says, has Baker Mayfield's trade value dropped since the injuries? God, Baker Mayfield was one of my most owned quarterbacks this draft season for the best ball stuff, and most of my best teams were Baker stuff. So I've actually been thinking about this question a lot, and I've come to the conclusion, G3, that yes, we are indeed screwed. It's probably over for Baker Mayfield. Not only do you need good wide receivers when you are a pocket quarterback to put up big fantasy numbers, but this team is going to go more run heavy now. It's just going to be not ideal, and I don't think Baker can elevate guys such as Trey Palmer, Sterling Shepard, Jalen McMillan. It's just Cade Otton. It stinks, G3. But yes, his trade value has dropped in a single quarterback league to waiver wire fodder. Nick Castleman says, would you trade Kenneth Walker for Cooper Kupp? So if Cooper Kupp was 100% healthy, maybe I'd think about this one, Mark. But with Cooper Kupp coming back from this ankle thing, he's old. He might be getting traded. I think I feel better about Kenneth Walker. What do you think about this one?
That's for sure Kenneth Walker for me. We have him as the running back 2 overall in our rest of season top 150 rankings. I think that's pretty dang fair. We've seen him get involved in the passing game a lot more. DK Metcalf out, looks like this week, maybe a couple weeks. So maybe the Seahawks lean into the running game even more with Kenneth Walker. I mean, he's just such an explosive talent and a great offense. It'd be really hard for me to give up Kenneth Walker for anyone, even Cooper Kupp.
Yep. Ken Band says CeeDee Lamb or Terry McLaurin this week. Wow. An embarrassment of riches. Everybody's coming with their embarrassment of riches today. I mean, I want to start both these guys. Obviously, with Mariota in there, it's worse for Terry McLaurin. But even if Jaden Daniels starts, I know CeeDee Lamb has not been great. He's had really good usage. It's going to click at some point here for huge games for CeeDee Lamb. So I think it's CeeDee Lamb either way here. Mark, would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, CeeDee Lamb, 100%.
Last question here today comes from B. Lewis 60. He says, Deontay Johnson or Keenan Allen. So as we mentioned, Deontay Johnson will be catching passes from Bryce Young this week. Meanwhile, we get Keenan Allen off of the bye, hopefully not fat Keenan anymore. Hopefully he kept himself in shape during the bye week here facing the Commanders. Mark, what do you think about this one, Deontay or Keenan?
Deontay gets arguably the toughest cornerback matchup in the NFL too, with Patrick Surtain expected to return from the concussion that he missed week 7 with. So pretty easy Keenan Allen here for me. They get the Commanders secondary, who has, probably performed a little bit better than we thought, but still one of the weaker units in the league. So yeah, it's Keenan Allen for me.
Oh, right. I agree there. Keenan. All right. Thanks to all of you for watching week 8 of the Fantasy Football Advice Show presented by Max. Good luck out there in all your matchups this week as Halloween approaches. Be sure you're checking out those Freddy Krueger and all those movies on Max. For Mark, for all the people behind the scenes of Bleacher Report, for all the people behind the scenes that Establish the Run, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.